And hi everyone. So my group will present about community and ecosystem ecology. So for this first topic, that is ecology of community, I'm going to explain about community interaction. They have 5 points overall. The first one is habitat and ecological niche. So this means as a role of a species that plays in a community, and also it is a method the species uses to acquire the resources it needs to make energy. Secondly is competition between population. As we know, this is very familiar, occurs when members of different community compete for sources that is actually limited, or other than that, maybe in the same community. For example, a group of lions compete each other for a rabbit. So this is called as competition. Third point, that is predator-prey interaction. It also can call as predation. Predator feeds on prey. As I already gave you example just now, the lion is considered as predator, meanwhile the rabbit is considered as prey. And also, for information, parasitism also considered as predation. So the fourth point, that is predator-prey population dynamics. Predator play a role in determining the population density of prey. If the prey population increases, so the population of predator might also increases. The last one, that is prey defenses. It is mechanism that thwart the possibility of being eaten by a predator. Evolve a variety mechanism that enables to avoid predators. So mostly prey, they want to protect themselves by being hunted by predator. So they have their special unique ability that can hide themselves and also can protect themselves. For example, moth have a unique ability that camouflage, so it can be seen by its predator. So the last one, I'm going to explain about community structure. They have two sections. The first one is species composition. It is generally expressed in percentage, and the second one is species diversity. It is number of different species that are represented in a given community. Thank you.
Next, we will learn about symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic relationship is the close association between two species in a long period of time. And symbiotic relationship will divide by three, which is parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. In general, we know that parasitism is one organism will get benefited and the others will get harmed, while the commensalism is one organism get benefited and the others will get no effect, and mutualism is both organisms get the benefited. Parasitism is similar to predation in an organism, which we call as a parasite. Parasite that derive nourishment from another, which we call as a host. And usually, parasite will harm the host by killing them over time. And parasite have a two type, which is endoparasite and ectoparasite. Endoparasite is the parasite that live inside the host, and ectoparasite is the parasite live on the host surface. The example of the endoparasite is the relationship between flatworm and human. The flatworm will attach themselves inside the intestine of the human. They will get food from the digesting food in the human, and human will get depriving nutrient. Okay. The example of the ectoparasite is the relationship between mosquito and human. Mosquito will bite human and get the food, while humans will get harmed by blood losing, itching, and disease. Second is commensalism. Commensalism is a symbiotic relationship between two species that one organism get benefit and the other will get neither benefited nor harm. First, the example is the relationship between egrets and cattle. Egrets will stay on the cattle and fix the insect that flash out from the grass, and the cattle will get no effect from the egret's action. It will benefited the egrets that they will get the food. Another example is the relationship between remora fish and a larger animal. The remora fish has a disc on their head, and it make them able to attach with a larger animal, which is whales or shark. And when the whale or shark get to feed, and the remora fish will detach itself and eat the extra food, and this relationship will benefited the remora fish, which they get the extra food.
Third is mutualism. Mutualism is symbiotic relationship in which both organisms get benefited. For example, the relationship between clownfish and anemone. Clownfish will clean the anemone and anemone will protect the clownfish. In this relationship, anemone will get cleanliness and the clownfish will get protection and food. Another example is the relationship between bee and plant. In this mutualistic relationship, bee gets the food and the plant will get a reproduction. This example is the example of the co-evolution.
Good morning, everyone. I am Vyshnavi, anak perempuan Gunasagaran, AS 12257 from Kuliah 10. I would like to present about the topic community and ecosystem ecology. This is a subtopic from the chapter Community Development. You can refer to matter chapter 45, page 858. Let's go. Learning outcomes. Upon completion of this section, you should be able to choose the correct sequence of events that occurs during ecological succession. Compare the two types of ecological succession. I hope that after my presentation, each and everyone who is watching this will be able to master these two learning outcomes. The table of content. Firstly, I'm going to give an introduction about this topic, followed by the ecological succession, and then I'm going to talk about the models of succession, followed by a summary video. Before we go deep into our topic today, let me share with you a simple quote here. Look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better, by Albert Einstein, the famous physicist. Saving our earth and its environment becomes a highly important task for each and every one of us, because it provides us food and water for us to sustain. Our well-being solely depends on this environment, and this is our responsibility to take care of it. Let's go to the introduction. The distribution of life has been influenced by dynamic changes occurring during the history of Earth. Look at this. You can see the continents slowly come together, forming the supercontinent Pangaea. This has caused many forms of marine life to become extinct. How? When the continents drifted towards the poles, immense glaciers drew water from the oceans and even chilled once tropical islands. This has become a not conducive environment for the marine life to live. Thus, each and every marine life has become extinct. During ice ages, glaciers moved towards southwards, then between ice ages, glaciers retreated. This has changed the environment and allowed life to colonize the land once again. Over time, complex communities evolved. Many ecologists, however, try to observe the changes as they occur during much shorter time scales. Part 2: Ecological Succession. Communities are subject to disturbance that can range in severity. What is disturbance? Example of disturbance is volcanic eruption, storms, glacier retreat, and even coastal sand dunes. These are all considered as disturbance. We know from observation that after a disturbance, changes occur in a community over time. What I meant is, after such disturbance, changes can occur in the community over time. Part 2: Ecological Succession. What is ecological succession? Ecological succession is a change within a community involving a series of species replacement. Ecological succession can be divided into two parts. The first one is primary succession and the second one is secondary succession. What is primary succession? Primary succession is the formation of soil from exposed rock due to wind, water, and other abiotic factors. This type of succession occurs in an area where there is no base soil, such as following a volcanic eruption or a glacial retreat. What is secondary succession then? It is a disturbance based on a succession in which there is a progressive change from grasses to shrubs to a mixture of shrubs and trees. This type of succession occurs in areas where the soil is already present, as when a cultivated field returns to a natural state. Let's look at an example. This is an example of primary succession as glaciers retreated from an area called Glacier Bay, Alaska. What is the disturbance? The disturbance is glacier retreatment. So after this, what happened? Let's look at it. Firstly, lichens and mosses invaded the area left vacant by the retreating glaciers, followed by small bushes growing in the newly abandoned soil. Then, fast-growing alder trees help build the soil, nutrient, and water content, which eventually improve the soil condition, allow the white spruce, western hemlock community to develop, eventually moving towards a more mature and stable community. Let's look at the image here. This is a more overview of what I explained just now. What happened? After the glacier retreated, pioneer species started to evolve, and then followed by the elder bushes, spruce hemlock, and developed into a more mature and stable community. These are the pictures which happened in the Alaska, which I explained just now. It nearly took about around 100 years for the state to become like this, to develop into a mature community. Truly long, is it? Yes, it is. It takes a very long period. Even though it's long period, just just look at the beautiful changes that our Mother Nature bring to us. Next. Okay, primary succession. This is a picture of a primary succession. Okay, let's look at this picture clearly. Do you see pioneer stage at the beginning? Yes. All right. What is pioneer stage? Now, next I'm going to talk about the pioneer species. These pioneer species are the ones that grow in the pioneer stage. All right, let's look into pioneer species. What is pioneer species? Pioneer species, which are the first producers to inhabit a community after a disturbance. These are the first species that begin secondary succession. The area then progresses through the series of stages over time. Pioneer species is actually the first ever plant that produces after a disturbance. The disturbance here which I am talking about is, for example, is volcanic eruption, storms, and so on. These species are the first species that are going to begin the secondary succession. The initial stage begins with a small short-lived species and proceeds through stages of species of mixed size and lifespans until finally large, long-lived species tree predominate. What do I mean here is, first pioneer species will take place, followed by the large, long-lived species of trees taking over it. Ecologists have tried to determine the processes and mechanisms, whether these processes always have the same endpoint of community composition and diversity. What are the examples of pioneer species? Do you know? Alright, let's look at the one in the picture that I've given here. The first one is lichens. Lichens break down rock to form soil. The second one is low-growing moss plants which trap moisture and prevent soil erosion. Part 3. Models about succession. What are the models about succession? What are we going to talk about here? Let's look into that. In 1916, F.E. Clements, he is the one who proposed that succession in a particular area which will always lead to a mature and stable community, which he called a climax community. He actually proposed 3 hypotheses, and the first one is climate is the main thing determines whether a succession resulted in a desert, a type of grassland, or a particular type of forest. The second hypothesis he brought to us was soil condition might also affect the results. Shallow, dry soils might produce a grassland whether otherwise a forest might be expected, or the rich soil of a riverbank might produce a woodland where a prairie would be expected. The third hypothesis that he brought to us was each state facilitated the invasion and replacement by organisms of the next stage. Shrubs can't grow on dunes until dune grass has caused soil to develop. Each group of species prepares the way for the next, so that the grass, shrub, forest development occurs in a sequential way. Therefore, in what is sometimes called the climax theory, this is known as the facilitation model of succession. This is the first model of succession which is known as the facilitation model. Secondly, an inhibition model has also been proposed to help explain succession that predicts that colonies hold on to their space and inhibit the growth of other plants until the colonies die or damaged. Another model has also been proposed, which is also called as tolerance model. Okay, so far we have looked into 3 models: facilitated model, inhibition, and tolerance. Okay, what is tolerance? Which tolerance model is actually used to predict that different types of plants can colonize the area at the same time. Sheer chance determines which seed arrives first, and successional stages may simply reflect the length of time it takes species to mature. This alone could account the grass, shrub, forest development that is often seen. Alright, let's recap. It is 3 models of succession, which is facilitation, inhibition, and tolerance. You can refer to the diagram here. However, the length of time it takes for trees to develop might give the impression that there is recognizable series of plant communities from simple to complex. In reality, succession occurs gradually, and the models mentioned here are probably not mutually exclusive, but a mixture of multiple complex processes. Let's look at an overview here. If you look at the middle, it states that at start, very few plants and animals and ends a hardwood occurs in forests. These are the similarities between primary and secondary growth. At the primary growth, we look at start of ecosystem, no soil, starts up to pristine habitat, short process, pioneer species, start habitat. At the secondary part, it continues ecosystem, pre-existing soil, started by a certain event, long process, population of species is introduced to establish the ecosystem. Let's go to the summary part. Let's watch this video together. A wild land fire can sweep through a forest with blazing force and intensity. If the forest has gone through extended periods of dry weather, a fire can be completely devastating. In this case, and after less destructive disturbance, the damaged ecosystem must begin the slowly process of regeneration known as succession. Annual plant life such as weeds and wildflower are the first species to return to the disturbed habitat. They sprout from seed
During the first year or two after the fire, these pioneer plants help transform the mineral composition of the soil, making it more hospitable. Seeds are new exotic plant species that may be introduced to the area during this time, carried by the wind or wild animals. If such invasive species take hold in the ecosystem, they often hinder the regrowth of native plants. Within the next few years, grasses and perennial plants return to the area. Shrubs and tree seedlings grow within 25 years. They provide habitat for the plants, birds, and small mammals, but shade out smaller plants. The forest floor becomes darker and tree grows taller, and many of the once dominant pioneer species begin to die off, replaced by hardier shade-tolerant plants. As environmental conditions become more favorable for hickory and oak trees, they too sprout. Approximately 150 years after the fire, the hickory tree and oak trees reach maturity, and the forest becomes a climax community. The population of plants and animals stabilize, and the species composition of forest ecosystem remains relatively constant until the next disturbance sets the process of succession in motion once. That's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really hope after this video you would be able to master the 2 learning outcomes that I mentioned earlier. These are the resources that I've used. The first one is from the book, and 3 online websites. Once again, thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum, I am Nurul Syafiqah. I will start the third subtopic in this chapter, which is dynamics of an ecosystem. First, I will explain about autotrophs. Okay, what is autotrophs? Autotrophs are organisms that require only inorganic nutrients and an outside energy source to produce organic nutrients for their own use and for all the other members of a community. So, autotrophs include photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. So, photoautotrophs, also known as producers, because they can produce its own food. For example, produce like non-plants and algae, they possess chlorophyll and carry on photosynthesis. In addition, algae are aquatic autotrophs, and green plants are the dominant photosynthesizers on land. Next, for some autotrophic bacteria, they are chemosynthetic. They obtain energy by oxidizing inorganic compounds such as ammonia, nitrites, and sulfides. They use this energy to synthesize organic compounds. Also, chemoautotrophs have been found to support communities in some caves. Okay, next. Okay, I will move on to heterotrophs. Heterotrophs. What is heterotrophs? Heterotrophs are organisms that need preformed organic nutrients they can use as an energy source. They are called as consumers because they consume food that was generated by producer. Okay, these are the heterotrophs. Firstly, herbivores. Herbivores are animals that graze directly on plants or algae. For various insects and zooplankton are small herbivores, while antelopes, bison, various fish, and manatees are large herbivores. Secondly, carnivores. Carnivores feed on other animals. For example, hawks that feed on birds and small mammals. Next, for omnivores. Omnivores are animals that feed both on plants and animals. For example, chickens, raccoons, and humans. Some animals are scavengers which eat the carcass of dead animals. Detritivores also heterotrophs. Detritivores are organisms that feed on detritus, which consists of decomposing particles of matter. Marine fan worms filter detritus from water. Example for detritivores are earthworms, some beetles, termites, and ants. Lastly, decomposers. They acquire nutrients by breaking down dead organic matter, including animal waste. They perform valuable service because they release inorganic substance which taken up by plants. Example for decomposers are bacteria, fungi, and mushrooms. So, autotrophs and heterotrophs can include in this nature of an ecosystem, starting with producers, then consumers, and decomposers. Further explanation is on energy flow. So that's all from me. Thank you.
For energy flow, it through an ecosystem following various pathways, eventually energy will dissipate into the environment as a heat. So energy will change to a heat. How energy loss? Energy loss through the process of respiration, used up for movement. Warm blood animals such as birds and mammals maintain a standard blood temperature. And last, warm blood animals lose heat energy in feces and urine. So the chemical energy of food is the main source of energy required by all living organisms, which is it transmitted to different trophic levels along the food chain. This energy flow is based on two different laws of thermodynamics. The first law states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one form to another. So the energy cannot destroy or you create the energy. It will change to another form. The second law states that energy will transfer more and more of it is wasted. So the more energy it will use, the more wasted, the more energy it will wasted. This is an example of energy flow. First, an arrow illustrates the possible transfer of energy within a grazing food web. For example, the nut provides energy to birds, which are then fed by a hawk. Second, green arrow states that possible transfer of energy within a detritus food web, which begin with detritus. Third, the organisms in the detritus food web are sometimes fed on by animals in the grazing food web, as when robins feed on worm. Robins is one of species from bird. Fourth, detritus provide energy to soil organisms such as earthworm, then it turn provide to carnivorous invertebrates which provide to carnivores. And fifth, the members of dental food web may become food for above ground carnivores. The dental and grazing food web are connected. The trophic levels. What is trophic levels? It's a level of nutrient within a food web or chain. For example, grazing food chain, it lives by caterpillars and warbler and hawks. For detritus food chain, detritus, earthworms and salamanders. To conclude this, green plants are the producer, animals in the center are primary consumers, last group animal are secondary consumers. This is ecology pyramid. The shortness of food chains can be attributed to the loss of energy between trophic levels. The higher the pyramid, the less energy they use. For example, only 10% energy is available to the next trophic level. If herbivores consume 1000 kg of plants, only 1 kg is converted into the body tissue. And if 100 kg is consumed, so 10 kg is converted into the body tissue and so on. So this is explain why few top level carnivore can be supported in the food web. It only use less energy. There are two types of pyramid, which is pyramid of number and pyramid of biomass. For pyramid of number, it represents the number of individuals in various trophic level of food chain. For example, each tree would contain numerous caterpillars, so there would be more herbivores than autotroph. The caterpillar will eat the tree as a food. The pyramid of biomass eliminates size as a factor because biomass is the number of organisms multiplied by the dry weight of the organic matter within one organism. The biomass of producer expects to be greater than the biomass of the herbivore, and the herbivore expects to be greater than carnivore. If you see the pyramids, the left view, the producer biomass is expected to be greater than primary consumer and the primary consumer is expected to be greater than secondary consumer.